Welcome to the Pastured Pig Podcast, where we share the successes and challenges of raising pigs on pasture. We talk to producers all over the country, from small homesteads to large commercial pasture operations. Whether you're new to pastured pigs or have been raising hogs for decades, we hope you hear new ideas and new perspectives on pasturing hogs. Here's your host, Troy McClung.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Pastured Pig Podcast. Excited to be back here in this holiday season. And as I'm recording this bumper, we are nestled between that dead time of life, Christmas and New Year's. We all just survived. Hopefully we all survived this cold winter blast. And, you know, in West Virginia, I'm not used to chipping ice on a regular basis, but I've been chipping a lot of ice here recently for pigs and chickens alike. But is what it is, right? You know, the way I look at it, hopefully all this super cold weather has eradicated a lot of the bugs and other pests for next year's growing season. But I hope everyone has managed to navigate this cold weather, even as far south as Florida. I know you guys got temperatures you're not used to. And those of you in the upper Midwest, my goodness, God bless you for getting out and taking care of anything at those minus degree real field temperatures. That was some crazy stuff. But it is good to be on a break. I usually try to take this week off from everything and just kind to lounge about. But since I haven't done my second podcast episode for December, I thought, well, let's go ahead and get that one out. We have plenty of interviews in the can, so let's go ahead and record some bumpers and get this out for you. So this is the one, and we'll obviously pick back up in January and continue with our regular schedule. I just want to do a quick update. Actually, I want to do a call to action, a request, if you would. Some of you listening, faithful listeners, have mentioned that you would like to be involved in any type of data testing we're doing with the Pastured Pig website. And I'm in the process of that. So that's my step now, is to data test to see if my code is proper. So if you all have, any of you listening that have a farm presence, so you do anything for resale, if you would, reach out to me, just troy@redtoolhouse.com. And I'm going to give you a link where you just go enter your basic information. And we'll use that to data test some things. And I'll even show you, kind of get you on the inside loop there, inner circle of what we're testing. And then once we've knocked all the bugs out of it, then we can make it available for the entire public. But if you wouldn't mind, if you'd like to be a part of that, just go to troy@redtoolhouse.com. And of course, this is in line with some of the stuff we've done with Patreon. So if you'd like to see this grow and grow faster, by all means, if you're not supporting us on Patreon, please consider doing that. The link will be below in the show notes there. Okay, so what we're going to get into, we're going to go ahead and get straight into our interview. And this interview, we're going to talk with Olivia Schontroop. She's with Breaking New Roots. And I really enjoyed this conversation. And I like the fact that just on 6 acres, this is a full-time gig for them. So it just goes to show you don't have to have 10s, 20s, hundreds, or thousands of acres to make a full-time job out of farming. So just with 6 acres, they're going full-time. They're polyculture, but they also use mangalitsa. So for those of you that feel that you can't make any money off mangalitsas, then Olivia could give you some advice as to how that's possible. So it's something I find very interesting. And also I want you to check out their website, and I'm going to put a link below as well. You'll hear us talk about that a little bit more in the discussion, but make sure you check that out as well. All right, well, let's jump into our conversation. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Pastured Pig Podcast. Today, we are going west to Indiana, and we're talking with Olivia Schontroop from Breaking New Roots Farm. Welcome, Olivia.
Hi, thanks, Troy. I really appreciate you having me and taking the time to talk with me today.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you coming on the podcast. I know you've got a busy day, and there's children in your midst, so if we need to cut short, we fully understand that. That's part of the farming life, right? Is taking care of the livestock and the little livestock, the mini farmers. All right, so tell me about. I want to know about Breaking New Roots Farm. First of all, tell me about a little bit where your farm is and just kind of the setup there. Give me that 40,000 foot elevation view first.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are a 6 acre homestead. in Shelby County, Indiana, which is just southeast of Indianapolis. We're like 30 minutes from downtown Indy's, but it's also very rural out here. So it's a really nice location to be in. And we do farm to table with beef, pork, and chicken. And over the last couple of years, funnest adventure, our funnest adventure has been having our pigs on pasture and being able to see what that world is like. So we have some Mangalista breeds, and we're working on a crossbred for ourselves, and then some value added products to make all the extra stuff that comes off of them available to consumers.
Oh, very good. Very good summary. I like that. That was very concise.
Thank you.
So, Shelby County, is that part of the Golden Triangle for whitetail? Is that within that area there that big whitetail hunters all over the country come to you guys?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought so.
Part of it, I believe. Yeah.
Yep. All right. So, yeah, that means you're in the heart of farm country. I guess a lot of monocropping around you and things like that.
A lot. So like I said, we only have 6 acres, and we are surrounded by corn and soybean fields. We have asked and knocked on doors and written letters to our neighbors to see if we could buy some of their property, and nobody is budging. So we are 6 acres strong.
Right. Yep. Got to go with what you got, right?
Right, exactly.
All right. So with Breaking New Roots, let's talk about, in pre-screening, you shared some things here that I think are really interesting for people to hear. So you, first and foremost, you are a full-time farmer. So let's talk about that a little bit, and kind of the dynamic that you and your husband have when it comes to responsibilities as far as employment goes.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess a little bit of my background. I grew up on a 300-acre row crop farm over on the Ohio line. And when I met Paul, we decided that we could do things a little bit different. And my dad had just started doing the farm to table thing. So we found our little spot in Shelby County and started raising our animals. And at the time, I was working at a bank full time. When we got married, my husband became a firefighter paramedic. So he does 24 on, 48 off. And then I actually transitioned out of the banking world and went and worked at a commercial pig farm. So I have the commercial experience, which I think really set us forward when we started doing our own thing. And then the days are long and you don't talk to people, and the pigs talk back, but not so much. So I went back to banking for a little while. We had our first child, Lincoln. And I got 4 months of paid maternity leave, which was incredible.
Nice.
And when I went back to work, my boss was like, okay, let's gear you up for this assistant manager position. We're going to get you going, start doing these things and these things. And my whole body just froze. And I was like, no. And she goes, what do you mean no? And I said, do not promote me. I will not be here in 6 months. And I hadn't even realized that for myself yet, but having that 4 months at home with full pay, so I didn't have to worry about the finances, I knew that that is where I needed to be, and the money, we would make it work. So I thought it would be 6 months, and it turned into 2. I couldn't stand it anymore. I was done at the bank. That was right after COVID, and I just couldn't handle things anymore in that world. And I came home, and it took us a while to figure out our responsibilities. We had been very much 50-50 when I was full-time, and he was able to do more things on the farm because he was home more often than I was, doing 24 on and 48 off. And then when I was full-time, things kind of transitioned to me doing everything basically full-time. And yeah, I mean, it's really been an amazing experience to see what the land will do for us. Now being a mom and having to share my love for the farm and the time with the kids, and not just time with the kids, but just responsibilities of being a mother. It's an interesting world.
Yeah.
I don't think that Paul or I could tell you that either of us have one responsibility over another.
Right.
We just know things need done, and somehow they end up done.
Yeah. Very good. Very good. Yeah. That's the core of teamwork there is you don't stick to job descriptions. You do what it takes to get everything taken care of. Love it.
Yeah.
So let's back up a little. Let's talk about, because you said something interesting there I think would be be worth exploring. So working at a commercial pig farm for a while, and getting that experience. So briefly, what was your capacity specifically? What were you required to do at the pig farm, and then how has that influenced you to the positive or to the negative with raising your own pigs on pasture?
Yeah, absolutely. If you don't mind, I'm going to take one extra step back.
Sure.
And that when on the farm that I grew up on, we had cattle.
Okay.
And that was my bread and butter. I love cows. They're my favorite. So when we first bought this place, my first need, it was a requirement, was cows. Pigs, were a little different story. My grandpa had some farrowing barns, and he at one point had like 30 farrowing barns on the property that I grew up on. Actually, we kind of traded houses with my grandparents.
Yeah. Wow.
And but that was gone by the time I came into this world. So working at the commercial pig farm, I was a farrowing tech, and I was in charge of about 300 sows and their pigs. And it was a lot of responsibility. There in the commercial world, everything is vaccinated. Most things are automatic feeders, but actually ours were not. Our sows were not on automatic feeders. We had to hand feed them when they were in their gestation rooms. Right. When they're in when they're in their farrowing rooms, they were not on automatic feed. So we had to hand feed them and make sure that they were getting the nutrition that was appropriate. And the people who had their own individual rooms, like me, I was responsible for that. So if I noticed that there was a certain sow that was not looking good, or she was starting to get sickly, or she wasn't eating appropriately, it was my responsibility to treat her, whether that was with feed, a different type of feed, or with a type of medicine or something. So from that, and then their piglets. So if there was an issue with any of the piglets, or if there was an issue with behavior of the sow to their piglets, all of that was in my repertoire.
Yeah.
Now on the commercial side, they were all in farrowing crates, and they didn't get, the exposure that our current sows do now. So I think what that did for me is it gave me a certain level of confidence that I really think I needed to be able to see sows. It also let me take a step back and let nature do its thing. My favorite story is when we had accidental piglets born on our farm. So we knew that it was time for us to get feeder pigs, and we could put them out on our pasture. And my favorite pig, she was so sweet, so docile, but she was the biggest. So she had to go to the processor first. And literally a week before her processing date, I looked at her really square, and I looked at Paul with a very confused look on my face. And he goes, "What's wrong?" I said, "Why does she look pregnant?"
Right.
And sure enough, gave her a week, and she had 9 piglets.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
did you have a boar? Did you have a boar, or some stranger come calling?
No, it was right before we bought them. I called the guy we bought them from, and I said, "Was she exposed to a boar?" And he said, "Well, yeah, but he wasn't very big, so I didn't think that he was mature enough to breed." And I said, "Well, he works."
Guess what? Yeah. They're very resilient, aren't they? They'll find a way.
Yeah. And so we weren't set up at all. We just had one little room in our barn. We have an old dairy barn from like early 1900s. And I was like, well, we'll just set her up in here and we'll just see what happens. Let nature take over. And it was the coolest experience. And I think I felt that harder from seeing it in a commercial side to seeing it in free range.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
it was a very different experience.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, that's a very unique perspective from you to being in the commercial setting, managing those, and just seeing how that operation goes and being part of that, to then, like you said, seeing kind of more of a natural element. And again, we could get down into the pros and cons of both, but I do appreciate the fact that you've done both, and you lean a certain way based on your experiences. So that's really good. So let's talk about you said the M word, which I think we have to address. So you have mangas. So what got you in that direction? So you kind of went all the way across the spectrum here, didn't you? So you went from a
I
commercial
sure did.
operation all the way over to hardcore heritage, slow grow out, woolly pig. What was the genesis of that?
Yeah. So like I said before, my dad had started Farm to Table right as I was finishing up college. And he had heard of this breed of Mangalista and he tried it. So when we were able to get our own pigs, I had already had that pork product and seen them grow on his farm. And I knew, my husband and I knew that that's just what we would get. And we would kind of figure out the details of that afterwards. My dad just has them on more of a dirt lot instead of rotating them on pasture. So when we started rotating them on pasture, we saw full force what those pigs really can do. And the coolest part is we put them in the worst part of our property. If it sprinkles, that part floods, hands down, always. So bad that we did have a big flood and the pigs swam over their fencing
Wow.
during that flood.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
And that next year, after having them on that part of our property for just one summer, that next spring, we had our first rain where it definitely would have flooded and it didn't.
Okay, so what do you attribute that to? What did the mangas bring to the table there?
We didn't let them like moonscape the property.
Okay.
We just let them eat it down, till it up a little bit, and then move on. And I truly think that they were able to disturb the soil enough to activate the seed bed that's under there, give it the manure that it needed, and it pulled up the seeds that needed to be like specialized in that area. It needs root crop is what it needs. It needs that big, thick, deep root, that plantain, those wide leaf, broadleaf plants. And that's what it brought. And then we also let it sit for that spring a little bit longer so that the early spring warmth could really push those roots down, let those plants come up. And I think that it's all attributed to the pigs.
Yeah. So if I don't want to put words in your mouth, so it sounds like their tillage that they did maybe tore down some of the compaction, thus promoting root growth, thus getting more absorption through that soil because you didn't have the hard pan compaction where water's just going to glance off. It was soaking in, thus eliminating the flooding potential you have because there's more absorption and the plants are using that water more.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, I'm not going to say that it never floods because it does still get really, really wet.
Yeah. But I think you're spot on there. I mean, we think about what are mechanical disturbances? What are they trying to do in those areas? You got to break up hard pan. That's why you plow and you disc and you do all those type of things to break up that crust. So if a pig can go do that while it's fertilizing along the way and activating that seed bank and providing nutrient, then yeah, it makes perfect sense. And it's really neat. I mean, I'm sure that wasn't like, oh, this is what we're going to do with this and we've got it all figured out. But to sit back and look and say, that's a pretty awesome side effect of having the pigs in this area.
Yeah, absolutely. That is exactly how we felt.
Yeah. Okay, great. So tell me about this cross that you're working on. So you've got the mangas and then we'll come back and kind of talk about your actual production that you're doing for resale. But you said something there about a cross that you're working on for kind of your personal stuff.
Yeah. So as we all know, or maybe I guess some listeners don't know, but the Mangalista breed, while it has wonderful quality, there's just not a lot of meat there. And we process our pigs big anyway. We try to get them about like 320 or so. So we do have quite a extra wastage. And what we have been working on is a cross with we've looked at some of the Burke breeds, some of the Duroc breeds, other of those ones that people say are good dirt hogs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And a friend of ours, who also has been on this podcast, Matt Ross with Field of Hops, he had a boar that was a Berkshire. So we bred him to three of our purebred Mangalitsa sow, or well, they were gilts at the time. And those babies are being processed in the first of the year. So that's kind of our first hop into the cross.
Yeah, so that'll kind of be your test there to see how those turned out.
Yeah. And as we've watched them grow up, they definitely are growing a lot faster than I thought they would. I was preparing full force for a 14 to 16 month grow out. And really, they're at that. I mean, they're a year now. And because of COVID, we can't get processing dates in now.
Right.
But they could be processed at the end of the year.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's, I want to unpack that a little bit. So let's go back to your pure mangas. What were you getting? Because you said 350 pounds was the finish weight that you're going for. So that's a pretty heavy manga. How long would it take you to get to that point with your manga?
They were probably closer to 320, I would say 300 to 320. I don't think we had any hit 350. So if I said that, I was wrong. Okay. But what we do is, so we have them on the pasture, and we also feed just a regular standard grower finisher feed. But we do half of that, half of their feed ration is with brewer's grains. And it took us about 14 to 16 months to get those mangies to the size we wanted.
Yeah, well, that's not bad. I mean, that's not bad. You hear stories that people looking at 20 to 24 months to get to a production size. So you're definitely ahead of the curve there. So it looks like with this cross then, and obviously it'll all determine what your finish weights end up being, but it sounds like you're maybe improving that by 25% as far as your grow out time.
Yeah. And time to maturity, I mean, yeah, there's feed costs in there, but it's not something that we are really heavy reliant on. We're more worried about what they can do for the soil and, what their quality is at the end. We just put out a YouTube video about brainwashed into efficiency, and that's about broiler chickens. Yeah. But it kind of ties back into the pigs too. My dad on his side has seen this as well as we have, that when you let them slow down, that the quality that you get from those pigs is just phenomenal. They're able to put in some of that intermuscular marbling. That fat is able to be kind of idled instead of that tough, hard to chew fat that it's like it was put on yesterday. Yeah. So letting them have that time to grow out isn't something that we're too concerned about. But ultimately, we are still feeding them feed, and that does cost money. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, again, you find what works for your market, what what your customer base is looking for, and then what works for you all. And I like, I talk about this a lot on the podcast, but I like when people embrace the multi-purpose function of the pig. So you're talking about soil improvement, the regenerative sides of this, not just for nearly the or solely the quality of life for the pig and the health of the pig, but for the health of the farm. And I assume they probably play a role a little bit, since you're dealing with 6 acres and you've got cattle and chickens and pork. They probably are some symbiotic things going in there amongst those, aren't there?
Yes, absolutely. We don't actually, last year we did, this year we did not graze the pigs with the cows and the chickens, because last year we realized that when you have pigs on pasture and they do till up a little bit, it is really hard to get a chicken tractor over that the next year.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. It leaves some gaps, doesn't it?
Yeah. So we have separated them. We do have plans next year to put some lane hens with them that are in more of like an open style setup, and not in a chicken tractor that has to go over all the rumples. But
yeah.
I do still think that it's very symbiotic with just the wildlife that comes through, the wild birds that come through. Mm-hmm. We have so many birds that we have never had before.
Yeah. Yeah. So in thinking of the lay of your land, I assume in that 6 acres, do you have much woodlot? Do you have any woodlot at all there?
We
Or
don't have any woodlot.
yeah,
It's
okay.
all, it was all a hayfield. So about 4 acres of it was a hayfield when we bought it 6 years ago. The other 2 acres consist of winter lots, house, and barn and outbuildings.
Yeah, so those hay fields probably weren't amended as well as they should have been. So that's, you probably had some pretty bad soil there, like you said, and that's where the mangoes are really helping you build that quality up.
Yep, absolutely.
Interesting, interesting. Okay, so I do have to. I know this is kind of not congruent with our conversation where it's going, but I do want to come back. You talked about your father and his farm close by and the land you grew up on. So is it safe to say that he's more conventional and you're kind of getting more into regenerative? And how does that dynamic work to you all? Are you all convincing him to look at these things, or is he set in his ways? How does that work out?
He definitely is more conventional.
Mm-hmm.
I think that as time goes on, he sees what we're doing, and appreciates it, but he does not want to do it that way. And we just, there's more than one way to skin a cat, as to say. So
Mm-hmm.
we just kind of let it be idle
Yeah.
at where it is. I tease him and my uncle. So my uncle has about 50 goats. And there's one field that he said, Olivia, you're going to be so happy with me. I said, why is that? He goes, I'm putting my goats out on that field. And I think it was, what was it? It was wheat. So they'd harvested the wheat and he was letting the goats go in and get the rest of it instead of doing straw.
Right, right.
I said, oh, did you get fencing? Are you going to move them every day? And he goes, well, no. I was like, oh, well, you're halfway doing it.
Right, right. Kind of the Columbus method. You turn them loose and then go discover them whenever it's time to bring them in. Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
but they're catching on. They're coming around, I think, a little bit.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where we really shouldn't be forced to go one way or the other, but I think when we start to draw our own conclusions, I mean, your dad's obviously, he's ahead of the game and even looking at the farm to table type stuff and just looking at value added services. When you look at conventional and everything's commodities and you're at the mercy of the whole national system, then looking at what can I do to value add, what can I do to insulate or add additional revenue streams. So that's good that he's exploring that and seeing how that fits into his model.
Yeah.
Along that line, though, I think let's spend some time talking about how you're doing that. So you mentioned you've got mangas, which of course are lard breed pig, and so they have some pretty good byproduct when it comes to processing. So since you're going to a heavier manga, you're obviously getting a lot of fat back, or if you didn't get it back, you're of course wasting that weight. So what are you doing to take advantage of that breed to maximize the products you're getting from processing?
Yeah, we have discovered that lard is like God's gift to earth.
Right. Yep.
I started doing research one night. I got lost in a rabbit hole about how good lard is for you. And from consuming it as an edible product to just putting flat lard on your skin. Paul was listening to a podcast one day. It may have been on your podcast, who somebody had like a really, really bad sunburn. And am I on the right track? Was that on your podcast?
I'll be honest with you, I can't remember, Olivia.
Yeah. Okay.
They're all blurring for me.
It was a long time ago, but
Yeah.
somebody had a really, really bad sunburn. Like they were blistering almost an hour after this sunburn. And all they had in their house was lard. So he lathered up with lard. And the next day, it was like he never had a sunburn at all.
Interesting. Yeah.
And so we started really thinking into that. And we are very fair-skinned people. We burn really bad. And we started looking into that. And we have found that I have what we call our ointment. And we use that for every skin ailment at all. So cuts, scrapes, dry skin, sunburns, just even regular burns. Of Paul's a firefighter, so he got burned on the tips of his ears from a fire one night, and we put ointment on it. and it heals everything so quickly.
Oh, excellent.
It is amazing. And then we started looking into soaps. And I have found, especially working at the bank during COVID, my hands were cracked and bleeding because they were so dry.
Sure.
Started using our soap with lard in it. No cracks, no dry, nothing. Perfect.
That is excellent. Yeah. I mean, I think, my goodness, I go down this whole rabbit trail of misinformation of lard over the last, 50, 70 years when we look at the heart association and all those type of things and trying to get away from these saturated fats and blah, blah, blah. But, I mean, it's kind of, kind of an idea of dance with who brought you, right? So you've got the mangalitsa that's going to produce all this stuff. So you can obviously just throw that away, or you can value add that. So it's kind of one of those things that triggers hey, let's research this. Okay, we see value in this. And now how many different products can we make? So Indiana, I assume, is similar to West Virginia. You can't produce lard for human consumption for resale, correct?
Yes, we can.
Oh, you can. Oh, very good. So
as long as the processor is bottling it, because it's state and or USDA inspected.
Gotcha. So at the processor. Yeah, I got you. So do you do that as well? Do you have your processor produce lard for you?
Yep, we do. So we have them render. For our R&D, we were rendering it ourselves just to see what the process was like. That takes a really long time and it makes your house smell like fat.
Right.
So we just have our processor do it now. And we do have some customers that are getting on that bandwagon of getting away from vegetable oils and going back to animal fats to cook with. So we do just sell them lard. I cook with it.
Yeah.
And then whatever isn't being sold, we use for soap and lotion. The other product we found was sunscreen. We use it for sunscreen too.
Oh, really? Really? Very good.
I found out my son, my oldest, he is allergic to commercial sunscreen, which after doing some research and you see what chemicals are in sunscreen, anyway, it's horrible.
Exactly. Yes.
And I was like, well, I'll have to make a homemade sunscreen then. And I started looking up how to do it. And they were using an oil and a fat. And I was like, I wonder if you could do that with lard. So I tried it and it is amazing. I find that I don't even burn. I just turn tan, which I've never tanned in my life, but it tans me.
Yeah. Well, that's great. So are you finding then, obviously you've got your local customer base, but these value-added products, of course, can go beyond just your local market. Are you taking advantage of online sales, any type of retail like that?
We just opened our Etsy store last week. When we really started pushing through these products after we got through our R&D is when I was very pregnant in the middle of the summer. And then we had our second child, our daughter. So things got pushed on the back burner a little bit.
Yeah.
And now that she's getting older and we're kind of figuring out our new life with this new routine with 2 kids, it's kind of coming back to the front burner and we're working on things again.
Cool.
So we just put our soap up on Etsy. We're working on candles also with our tallow from our calves. So that'll be on there too. And then we'll get our ointment going. We're changing up how we have it. So our ointment, I was just doing lard and an essential oil. I try to keep things really simple, but through some R&D, I found that beeswax added to it really helps. So I found a local beekeeper that I buy all my honey from and got their wax and started using that. So we'll push that back on Etsy here soon too.
Oh, very good. Very good. I want to back up real quick to your process of rendering your lard. And this is kind of my own morbid curiosity. So when you ask them to render your lard, are they producing that in your resellable container so you don't touch it at all, or are they giving you a large quantity of it and then you're able to repackage when you bring it home?
They put it in a 2-pound container themselves with our label on it and the USDA sticker on it.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense that it has to be 100% handled by them. You bring it back in, and I assume that's not vacuum. That's not shelf stable. Is that something that you then have to refrigerate until it's sold, or?
We have it in our freezer. They give it to us frozen. So we just kind of keep it in we have a walk-in freezer. So we just keep it in there.
Yeah.
I have kept lard in our fridge for months and it's still good. So I don't really know what the shelf life is on that, to be honest, but it seems to be a long time.
Yeah, there seems to be some discussion, I guess would be the appropriate word to say about that, because we've canned lard, and I've kept it on the shelves for a very long time canned, and it's fine. And then you hear people tell stories about, oh, my lard went rancid so fast, but I think there's a lot to do with the processing of that and rendering how clean it was rendered, all those type of things, and how much
Yeah,
heat.
and I think if there's like some water that gets into it, that can make it go rancid really quick too.
Yeah, that makes sense. So is and you don't have to get into pricing per se, but is the processor, I assume that's a value-added service they offer that is still reasonable for you to be able to resell the lard to your customers?
Oh yeah. I am not good with numbers right off the top of my head, but they don't charge hardly much at all to have it rendered. We pay more for the packaging than we do for the process.
Right. Do you have them separate leaf from back fat and all that, or do you just have it all
Nope,
put
we
together?
just have it all go into one.
Yeah, interesting. Very good.
Yeah.
All right. So let's fast forward here. So looking at your farm on 6 acres, how much would you say you're kind of maximizing your land? Is there opportunity for growth? Are you looking to grow here in the next 5 years? What's kind of the future goals here?
Yeah, that is a funny question right now. We have decided from COVID that we needed to grow. So, what brought me home from the farm, which was 2 years, or brought me home to the farm, which was 2 years ago, was we quadrupled our production in 1 year.
Wow.
That was huge growth for us, but we've been able to maintain that. So, on our 4 acres of pasture, basically, we have a really solid income, but we do still sell out of things. So, we got in contact with a friend, and this year we were able to rent their 2 acres of row crop and 13 acres of, or not 13, 6 acres of woods. And that turned out to be a bit of a disaster. They're 20 minutes away from us. And we thought, oh, that'll be no big deal, no problem. But the pigs got out and we chased them for miles for a full 24 hours.
Oh, gracious. Wow.
It was horrible. So we brought them home, and then we still wanted to use the land, and they still wanted us to use the land. So we put cows out there, and then the cows got out. And it's just too far away. So we're taking a pause on that at the moment. And in that meantime, we want to find other spaces of our property that we can use to do other things. So we want to expand our farm, but maybe it's not in beef, pork, and chicken. Maybe it's in wildflowers on the hill by the road that nobody likes to mow. Maybe it's in getting a couple beehives. Maybe, part of like a U-pick garden or something, pumpkins, things like that. So we're looking at other value added things we can do on our tiny little property that maybe is a little bit different than what we've been doing. And it's not just livestock.
Yeah, I have to applaud that, because that is, that's not putting a square peg in a round hole type of situation. You're looking at, you go with what you've got, but look at what you can do. And I keep using the word value add, but that's a really important aspect of that, because whether it's just producing a product that's grown, whether it's a cucumber or a pig, then and you turn around and sell that item, versus taking something that requires additional post-production that allows you to have greater margin, then you get to explore that with your property and say, hey, here's a 100 by 100 area, or maybe a 50 by 50 area that per square footage is going to produce way more money, because again, you've come up with some additional product from that. And taking that time, having that creativity to look at that and taking that time to explore that, I think that's very wise, versus saying, we got to have more land. So I assume probably tillable acreage around you, that you're probably looking 10,000, 12,000 plus an acre, going out and saying, oh, we got to buy 5 more acres, and that's going to require us to go into debt, or I got to go back to work or something like that for this to happen. So yeah, I like the way
that is a big problem here. So the county next to us is Rush County. It's a county east, and it has the best soil in the state of Indiana.
Yeah.
So around here, we're at about $13,000 to $15,000 an acre.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, it's it's expensive. And we've tried to move, and it's just it's hard to make it worth it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's especially right now, and I run
Yeah.
into this all the time. In fact, a lot of people ask me about land in West Virginia, but land is always been expensive, but it's even more so right now. And so yeah, making that move right now would not necessarily make financial sense. So yeah, again, just go with what you've got, work with what you have, and try to find a way to maximize that. So yeah, I appreciate that attitude of y'all, and that keeps you from getting upside down too quickly and stuff that can hamper you for the next 20 years. So
Yeah, it's really easy to make a rash decision too. There was a property that came up for sale just north of us, and we were about all in. And Paul and I tend to be extremists, and usually we calm each other down. So usually I'm at one end and he's at the other. But this one property came on, and we both got really, really excited. And I was calling the banker, and then I started talking to my dad, and he started talking numbers with me, and we realized that it would be damn near impossible for
right.
us to buy that and not be so financially strapped that it wouldn't be a successful farm.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
So,
there's wisdom in that, definitely.
yeah.
I could speak to the opposite because when I was 20, goodness, what was it, 20, 25, I bought this 100 acres, and at the time, my the president of the bank that we were dealing with was a good friend of the family, and he's like, "Yeah, I'll give you anything you want." And so I was like, "Okay." So we go back and get more money. Yeah, you can have it. You can have it. And nobody ever asked, "Where's your budget? How are you going to pay for this?" All that type of stuff. So when it came time to finally finish up after 2 years of buying and building, I was like, "Oh my goodness, this mortgage is insane." so,
Yeah.
so yeah, so it's taken me, I'm no longer 25, but it's taken me many, many decades to get that under control. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's great to see that. Yeah, have that wisdom before you do that, and realize that okay, this probably isn't the right direction to go on this. Let's pump the brakes, and let's see what we can do here with what we've got.
Yeah. And ultimately, I mean, we do love where we are. We are so close to everything. I mean, like I said, we're 30 minutes from downtown Indy,
Mm-hmm.
and where we get our brewers grains is downtown Indy. So, it's a nice trip. We can stop by the zoo on a good day through the
Yeah.
summertime and make it, more of a family thing. And that's something too that's been hard talking earlier about it being full time is when you work a 9 to 5 job, you have this like limited time to do things on the farm, and you feel very stressed and strapped that you have to do so many things in this really small window.
Yeah.
And then when you farm full time and you have kids, it's a very strange feeling to do work in the middle of reading a book to my toddler
Right.
and going and getting brewer's grains. So we're picking up feed for our animals, but we're going to stop and have a beer
Yeah.
in the middle of the day.
Sure.
It's been a very interesting feeling for me specifically to work through and say, hey, I'm still working. I'm at the zoo today, but I'm still working.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you see that? And this is obviously getting a little bit off topic, but I do have to ask. So do you see yourself? Are you going to be a homeschool mom at some point, or is that something that's in the cards right now?
Yeah, I think that we're leaning towards homeschooling. But ultimately, I think we're very child led around here.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll just see how our kids do.
Yes.
Our oldest is very emotional
Mm.
and he does things on his own time.
Yeah.
So we just kind of sit back and let him see how it goes. We are getting into like co-ops and other homesteady families we're befriending that are also homeschooling families. So it's probably in our cards, but we'll just kind of see how things go.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. That's the right attitude to have. Play it year by year. When we started with our one that's will be almost 21 now, when we started homeschooling him in kindergarten, we're like, it's kindergarten. How bad can you screw it up, right? So so we started there, and here we are. 15 years later, we have a 20-year-old and a 17-year-old. The 21-year-old's already graduated from college, and the 17-year-old is well on his way as well. So it's
Awesome.
one of those things that it worked well for the farm, it worked well for the family, and it worked well for the boys. They had that bent in that direction. So that's where, exploring that with your kids and say, well, they have that bent as well, so maybe it's worth investing. And you kind of already have the model working for you now. So a stay-at-home working mom is a stay-at-home working teacher as well. So there's
right.
It's kind of like you've already assumed that role before really getting into it.
Yeah, the many hats of a farmer. For
Indeed,
sure.
yeah, I love it, and that's why I was looking through your social media. I love the fact you've got videos and you got pictures posted that you're out there doing chores, and you've got the papoose wrap. I don't know the proper name for that, but you got your baby strapped to you and everything. You're just getting work done, and I love it. Yeah,
Yes. We had a different YouTube channel last year, so our farm name is Sean Troop Farms, and we wanted to rebrand, and in that process, our YouTube channel was accidentally deleted.
Oh no, yeah.
But in those old videos, I had Lincoln in a carrier. And in one video, I was field loading calves by myself because Paul was on duty and the calves needed loaded on the trailer. And I have Lincoln on my back. And all the comments were like, what's on your back? What are you? Oh my gosh, that's a kid. You're doing this and you have a baby on your back? I'm like, it's just life. It's just farming.
Yep. That's the way it is, and that's the way it's been done before we got all technical. It's the way it's been done for thousands of years. That you took them
Absolutely.
out with you. They learned how to do it as well, one way or the other. Awesome. Well, Olivia, let me. I want to be sensitive to your time here because I know you've got youngins that are sleeping, and you want to. When it was always the adage, when they're down, you're down, or you're taking care of stuff that can only be done when they're asleep. So I don't want to keep you through entire nap time here. But let me ask you. Let me close with this one question: what is your favorite thing, or the best part about raising pigs on pasture?
Ooh, can I answer that with a story?
Please do.
Okay. So the surprise litter of pigs that we had, and they were in a makeshift part of the barn that we figured out would work. I went out to check on them one day, and I saw the mom, and she's laying up against the fence on the outside because this part of the barn, there's a section in the barn, but then there's a run outside. And I see her laying by the fence, but I don't see the piglets. And I'm like, where did they go? Like, surely all 9 didn't get picked off by a hawk or something. And I look around, and on the other side of this fence, where the piglets could go, but not the sow, these piglets had taken this tall brush that was up against the fence row and knocked it down. And they were laying together underneath this brush, safe from aerial predators, but still right next to mom, but far enough away from mom that they weren't going to get laid on. Nice. And it was my aha moment of these pigs really know what they're doing. Right. They are as intelligent as we have seen, and like these studies that have come out that initially said that pigs were the stupidest animal, but then they changed their line of sight and now they're actually the smartest animal. They really are the smartest animal. And since then we've had even more stories of that, of just the pigs figure it out. And that's why I love the Mangalitsa breed so much, because they figure pasture out. We bought a boar ourselves this year, and he was a Tamworth, and he was still like a commercial hog from the show world. And he actually died on pasture because he physically didn't get up to get a drink of water.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. But the sows, on the other hand, were in this tall pasture, uprooted the plants, and made a little hut. So I went out to go check on the sows and I didn't see them. And then I hear one bark at me from underneath this mound of chaff. And I realized that they made their own bed.
Sniper cell. She's hiding.
Yeah. So my favorite part of raising pigs is that they are so cool.
Very good. Yep. No, they're great stories. Great stories. Appreciate that. So if people want to find out more about you, because I think we want to make sure we underscore all of this. So if they want to find out more about the farm, where can they find you? And then where can they find your products?
Absolutely. So we are on YouTube, Facebook, kind of Instagram, and TikTok as Breaking New Roots. Our farm is Sean Troop Farms. That's my last name. I'm sure you'll put a link in the show notes. And it's just SeanTroopFarms.com. That's our website. And we are on Etsy as Sean Troop Farms.
Yes, very good. Yes, wonderful. Yeah, and I understand as a marketing guy, I understand the impetus for rebranding Sean Troop Farms, because people hear that and they think, now how do you spell that?
That's the first thing they say.
Exactly. And it's nowhere close to what it sounds like, is it? Yep.
Well, and even a funniest story, our processor, we had our labels made with our name on it, on our product, and they spelled it wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
I can understand it. Yep. Yep. That's why people have a hard time with McClung as well. So we just went with Red Tool House. So it's like, okay,
yeah,
three simple
absolutely.
words to spell. So, all right. Well, Olivia, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast. Enjoyed talking with you, and it was really good. I like getting into some of the deeper discussions as to why and how you do things. But I really appreciate you coming on, and I pray you have a great week, and the kids sleep for an extra hour today so you can get more done.
Well, thank you, Troy. Thanks for having me on here again. I really appreciate everything, and maybe I'll be on here again someday.
All right. Sounds good. Take care. Well, I really appreciate Olivia coming on the podcast. I thought that was an interesting discussion, and I appreciate her time and appreciate everyone. You look back over the last year, just been a lot of stuff going on, but a lot of good interviews, a lot of good discussion, and of course, that's all thanks to you all, those of you all that decide to venture out, maybe get out of your comfort zone and allow me to record our conversation. Really appreciate that. I know there's a lot more listening ears out there that have not yet have reached out to be part of the podcast, but would love to have you tell your story in 2023. So by all means, please go to thepasturedpig.com and you can use our form there to submit your information, or you can just email me directly, troy@redtoolhouse.com, and then we can obviously get a discussion going there and get something recorded. Again, if you want to be part of our data testing and you have a commercial or a retail wholesale farm operation, if you're selling to anybody other than yourself, let's say, reach out to me, troy@redtoolhouse.com, and I'll get you a link to do some testing. It require a little bit of data entry on your part, but nothing crazy, and it's just obviously data entry dealing with your specific operation. And you can obviously give me feedback in that data entry process as well. But I'd like to get that tested throughout January and maybe have something ready to roll out in February if things go well. All right. Well, if you want to be on the podcast, reach out to us. If you got some topics you want us to discuss, then by all means do so. And also any feedback if we need to start looking more at news. I don't know if you guys, anyone that follows the channel, but kind of been on this this kick about tearing down some of the how do I say this? Misinformation about feral pigs as they relate to pastured operations. So I've had some really good feedback and some hateful feedback on YouTube about that. So it's made for some interesting conversation. So not to plug my own channel, but if you want to check that out, I would love more input from pastured pig operators as they speak into the same situation. All right, well, I pray everyone have a great new year. Please remain safe and pray that 2023 unfolds in the direction you would like it to. All right, take care.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of the Pastured Pig Podcast. To learn more about our podcast or to submit topics or recommend guests for future episodes, visit redtoolhouse.com.